Hey guys, Ricky here. I'm coming at you with some cozy photos and talking a little bit about quality. I know that this is not the most riveting image ever, but this is a good example of very low light and mixed lighting and being intentional about excuse me, how I'm editing the photo to make it look as good as possible. So this was the edited image I came up with. This was the original out of camera. It just takes some intention, like knowing the possibility of what this photo could be. The clarity is not perfect on her face. It's a little more on my hand and blanket, but I wasn't the one taking the photo. I'm in the photo. I set the scene up and then had it taken for me. So it's important to know, to one, have the vision to know what's possible here, and then setting up to get the shot. And that's what I did. Now, had I been a little more mindful, I could have turned myself to the left so the light was a little bit more direct on the kitten's face, but it's not a big deal. It was just a cute little, just everyday at home photo, snuggling with my kitten and reading. So, yeah, so it's possible to take good low light photos with a good DSLR and good intention behind creating a photo, or rather intention with light. So I tend to go for the softer contrasts. I know that some low light scenes, and depending on how your eye perceives it or what the outcome is that you want, can either be very contrasty or can be kind of softer and more just calming looking, and that tends to be what I like to go for. So there's really no right and wrong. It just is a matter of your style and what you like. This would be too much. You can see quality is lost there. So as with everything, you have to be just mindful of how you're editing, how you're changing things, and color. Color is so important. You can see there's quite a bit of grain. You see all the grain here in this image. It's natural grain from ISO. It's not color grain that you get from loss of quality. So basically, if I were to do this, then you can kind of see how much noisier and grainy it gets. I guess there's really not any color grain just because you can kind of see here, this is where you would lose out. This is some color grain there. And that's a loss of quality. That's going to show that it needs some work. So at this stage, we're not too far into, losing quality. Like I could still print this photo and it would still be very cute. So I just want to bring in a small S curve on the color channel just to really get the best look possible. I want the colors to be warm and soft, and yeah, I just want to make this like a good photo, right? I want it to be worth sharing, if you will. This can mean any number of things, but low light does take a little bit of practice. It's the number one question I get asked across all my channels, and all of the type of photography I shoot is, how do you take low light photos? And it really comes to, I shot this with my Prime 50 at 1.4, 1/60th of a second, and ISO 800. And I'm not afraid of doing that. I'm not afraid of telling my focal point where to be. I'm not afraid of shooting with some ISO. I don't mind natural grain. That doesn't bother me. And if you've ever been a film user, you know that it just comes with the territory. For some reason, over the years, we perceived having grain in a photo as being a bad thing, or you're not shooting good enough, or you need a better camera. And I'm here to say that none of that's true. I think a little bit of grain is a good thing. I like it in low light photos because it makes sense. Now, on the flip side, people have put grain in unnaturally, where if you go down here into Lightroom, or while you're in Lightroom, you can go to the Effect tab, and here you can add grain to the photo. I know a lot of presets are popular that have grain, and a lot of people like to put it in there because sometimes it kind of helps reduce the like there's kind of the clarity issue on her face, so a little grain kind of distracts you from that. But there's already natural grain in the photo, and that's when I like it the best, when it's naturally meant to be in the scene. So whatever your preference is, though, that's all that matters. So just going to kind of fine tune the coloring so that it's not too rich in reds or oranges and looking kind of fluorescent-y. I want it to be just warm as in cozy, and that's what I tend to like the best. It helps when you go into shooting any scene, is like kind of having a vision. And that's something that I almost always do. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes you'll see the results and you're like, oh, that's not quite what I'm going for. And that's okay, because it just can't always, things don't always work out perfectly. But sometimes that just means you need to change things up, or, put more intention, or maybe don't try quite so hard or try harder. It just depends on what you're going for. But I do like having some semblance of an idea of what I'm getting ready to shoot, right? I need to know, like, what am I doing here? What is the outcome that I want? So if I know I want a dark, moody, and warm photo, well, then I can shoot with those parameters in mind. So if I know that, hey, this is going to be darker and moodier, then I can, when I shoot it, I don't have to worry about having an ISO of 1600. I can shoot it with ISO 800. I can be directionally mindful of the light. So, if I wanted this brighter, I could have been closer to the light. If I wanted it darker, I could have been further from the light. And so it's just a matter of knowing kind of what I wanted and shooting with that in mind. Again, I could have done this a lot better, I think, just because, and I was just doing this with, having someone else shoot the scene for me so I could have a picture of me holding the kitten. But yeah, so just have some intention, know what you're getting out of it, and be prepared for the use of light. I'm really loving this lens correction as a vignetting option. So if you haven't practiced with this that I mentioned in the last video, make sure your lens profile is on your camera. Obviously, I think it's important to have these set just because it changes. In this case, it's not a huge change, but it does bring in the lens distortions. So these corrections are important to select. And then if you want that dark vignetting, if you want it more intense, I really am enjoying using this tool here. And then you can bring the distortion back in. But it's having that control that I think is really important to utilize. So, and it's attention. It's knowing, like, again, there is light coming here, so there's not going to be as much of a vignette as there would be here in this top left corner or down here. I like to be intentional from edge to edge and corner to corner as much as possible. So it takes a little bit of effort to like train your eye to like, here's a subject, oh how cute, but like let's look around. We see texture and color here, and then it's kind of all dark because of the directional lighting, and that works. It ends up being a pretty cute scene. Again, I know that this is not some amazing photo, but this is my everyday life, and a lot of times that's just what I'm looking to document and what I want to I want to be happy to have these photos and to share them and think like, oh, that's so cute and that's so fun. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. So this is about where I left off. I could mess with this probably a bit more, but I'm happy with this outcome to start. Okay, so I have another low light photo that I wanted to start base with you, just because you can see that there is a window here. So I'm shooting on the opposite end of where the light's coming in, and it's going to look really dark. Had I shot with the window behind me, so shooting right into this area, it would have been much better lit, obviously. There is a window far off behind me here to the left, but it is doing almost nothing because of how far away it is, and it's so indirect. But because I like to get a good variety, I knew that this angle with the low light was going to be something that I wanted in my, you know, portfolio of images from this shoot. So let's go through and kind of see just what some basic editing options are going to look like here. Candlelight, especially this time of year, is huge. It's very important to, you know, give some, and if you want like ambiance, mood, atmosphere, if you're going for any of that ever, having candlelight is going to help you so much. Now I am going to desaturate these greens quite a bit because I don't really want the greenery in the background to take away from the rest of the photo. I don't want to completely lose it because obviously that is a window, there's something out there, and I want it to be like, you know, that there's something, there's greenery, it's outside. That's what I'm trying to say, is that like it's still outside, but I don't want it to take away from the rest of the image. I want your eyes to be kind of here at the center of the table, like, oh, pretty candlelight, and oh, there's the window. And it's important to have that directional lighting understanding. So let's kind of keep going through here. Let's just play with colors, see how they're all affected. And what's interesting is where the most colors are. So you can see like none of these are truly being affected all that much. But in the long run, as you adjust these, you will see it more in the color calibration, which I like to adjust as well. And that's once you get to the color calibration and see what has been changed, then you can then come back through and redo your HSL color panel or fine tune it if you need to. So I'm loving the richness of this. I actually think I want to go back up here to split toning, see if we can soften it a touch. Midtones here I think are one of the more important ones as well. They kind of show the balance and contrast of light versus dark in the shadows, and I think often you can have something kind of like this, but it's easy to just bring this slider up. So if you're wanting to show off the best possible outcome, be mindful of those midtones. Here we can, here's that natural vignetting, here's kind of getting rid of it. Again, I think that's a very good opportunity to bring out some photo quality. I should mention, I'm noticing it now that I'm editing, there is probably a lamp over here to the left that's on very low, because you can tell these are lit up and it's not from the window. I think there is a lamp over here that was on. So I don't do a ton of lamplight unless it's on purpose. And it needs to be the right kind of light bulb, like I said before. That's a very important thing. Like I've literally gone through my entire house and switched out all those orangey warm lights just because, one, it strains the eyes, like I said, but two, because it's just not good light to shoot in, which might sound trivial, but this is a part of my daily life, so I want to have opportunities available to document, you know, my at-home life. As we get into the colder months, you know, that's really all we have available. So here's a before, here's after. I'm really happy with that. I'd be happy to share that and use it. It's still probably a little darker in contrast than I would like, but I also don't want to raise the shadows anymore and start looking at unnecessary grain. You can see, so here I'm using the 51.4, 1/200th of a second ISO 500. So there's going to be some noise, but that's a given, right? You're in a low light scene, there's going to be grain. I don't think there's any reason to be afraid of that. If you hate it so much, you can use a little bit of noise reduction, but again, this is where quality is important to keep in mind, because if I use too much noise reduction, sure, it softens that grain, but it also softens the clarity. So let's see, the focal point is right here, so kind of on the centerpiece, this glass, and you can see how with no noise reduction, this is pretty clear, even with green. Add noise reduction and it becomes a much softer. I'm not a fan of using noise reduction unless like it's just really, really grainy and I just don't want it to be too distracting. So Some things to keep in mind, and same for color. You can help with the color noise if you have that as well. Don't think that we're working with that too much. Well, you can see it a little bit, but then you can see right away here in this leaf right here how I'm losing that clarity. And up close, it doesn't matter quite as much, but I do feel like as you move away, or if you're holding this as a printed photo in your hand, or you're putting it onto a website, you're going to notice that. It's something that I would for sure notice as I went on. Maybe I wouldn't look at it and be like, oh, yep, that noise reduction is reducing the color quality or the image quality, but as you go, if you did this every photo or it was too soft and in focus, then you would notice that for sure. So some things to keep in mind. I hope that you found this helpful and that this inspires you to kind of move around in low light scenarios. You know, yes, take photos here from the window and use all that natural light. Like, look at all this opportunity right here, all this natural light coming in. And of course I do have photos from that angle, but I do want to show you that you can shoot with the light coming in, like directionally lit, use candles, and then of course there was this lamp over here that adds a little more interest. So it does kind of bring your eye through the scene, which is important. And so, yeah, so when you're shooting, you know, start with the window light, you know, lighting up your main subject, but then also move around and see what else you can take and what other opportunities are available to have a diverse portfolio and to have a good amount of options in your photos. I will see you in the next video. Bye.